Hello everyone, I hope everyone is doing well today. I'm Miss Dentler and we will be talking about copyright law today. What is copyright? Copyright is extremely important to you as students and will be necessary information to keep in the back of your brain moving forward. Copyright is the legal rights to an original work. This means that any original work that has gone through the legal process to be copyrighted is considered copyrighted. So your book, painting, sculpture, or song will have to go through a specific process before copyright can be claimed. Copyright allows users to obtain and use work that someone else created to create a new work of their own. This means that you could use a snippet of a song in your project about upcoming musical artists or a short selection from a play in your theater class. Any original work can be copyrighted: books, movies, screenplays, sculptures, and works of art. These are some important terms that you will need to know throughout the presentation. Copyright we have already briefly discussed, but the Merriam-Webster definition is the exclusive right to reproduce, publish, sell, or distribute the matter and form of something such as literary, musical, or artistic work. Fair use is a legal doctrine that portions of copyright materials may be used without permission of the copyright owner, provided the use is fair and reasonable, does not substantially impair the value of the materials, and does not curtail the profits reasonably expected by the owner. Public domain is the realm embracing property rights that belong to the community at large, are unprotected by copyright or patent, and are subject to appropriation by anyone. A great example of that last one is Shakespeare. Many theater groups are able to perform Shakespeare for free because his works are considered public domain. A lot of classical literature and a lot of works that you will use in English class are actually in the public domain now. Fair use is the law that is Fair use will be the most applicable to you as students. Fair use is the purpose and character of the use, including whether such use is for nonprofit. There are a few things that need to be considered when determining if a work is considered fair use: the nature of the copyrighted work, the amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole, effect of the use on the potential market for or value of the copyrighted work. It is important to note that fair use is a legal defense that can be used by educators and students in a courtroom, but considering the factors mentioned previously before using copyrighted work will help to keep anything from possibly going to court. Less is more when it comes to a copyrighted work. It is always better to use a shorter snippet or a piece of work when using something that has been copyrighted. So for example, if you want to use a song from a musical in your theater class presentation, it's always better to use a short snippet of the song rather than using the song as a whole. As much as I love musical theater music, it's really important to make sure that we're using a small piece and not a big one. Less is more in this situation, for sure. So what do you do if fair use doesn't apply to you? Most of the time it will because you're students, but it's important to keep in mind that you need to keep things short. Like I said before, less is more. If you get nothing out of this presentation, remember, less is more. If fair use doesn't apply or you want to use a bigger portion of the work, you will need to contact the publisher or producer with specifics on what you want to use and why you want to use it. Occasionally, this method will require paying a fee for royalties if you want to use the whole thing. For example, if you want to use an entire Taylor Swift song in your project, you may need to pay a royalty for the use of that song. But if you use a short clip of it in an educational setting, it will fall under fair use. One other really great example of this is recently with distance learning, a lot of teachers needed to do read alouds with their students. So because the change in setting, everything moved online, a lot of teachers had to gain express permission from the authors, publishers of different books, of different children's books, to make sure that it is appropriate to be read online. And many publishers set certain standards and set a time limit for how long that could take place. So, for example, if a teacher wanted to read a book in class, they had to state the name of the author, the illustrator, and mention that the publisher was allowing them to use this for an educational purpose. So any recordings or anything like that couldn't be shared outside of an educational situation, so they couldn't be posted to YouTube. And a lot of publishers defined that to make sure that the work was protected and that the artist was protected within that situation. If you can't gain access to the work from a publisher or producer, which sometimes happens, you can look for something royalty-free or in the Creative Commons. But keep in mind that both royalty-free and work in the Creative Commons can have specified uses for their work. Some can't be produced digitally, some can't be used for commercial use. Make sure you double check that it is appropriate for your use. So, for example, if you want to use a logo or a picture, you can use stock photos for different pictures within your work. You'll see that a lot if you use different programs like Microsoft PowerPoint. You will have access to different stock photos. But if you want to use a logo of a brand, you may be able to use it, but again, you have to get permission to use it. Or if it is considered in the Creative Commons or royalty free, you have to abide by the terms that are placed when you try to use it. So in this situation, if you are doing a project for your business class and you want to use a logo from a specific company, you have to make sure that that logo is appropriate for you to use within the educational setting. If you were going to take that logo and start selling stuff using that logo, it could become an issue because that logo is already used for a business. So copyright law can be very complicated and confusing, but the main point is everything you use needs to be for educational use. So you can't take a project that you use at school and distribute it, sell it, that kind of thing, because that will not end well for anyone. So why is this important? You are a student. You are going to use this all the time when working on collaborative media projects. Copyright is an extremely relevant topic today thanks to video streaming apps such as TikTok and YouTube, as well as music streaming apps like Apple Music and Spotify. It is important to remember that you are responsible for your own work. We expect you to work collaboratively with your peers and be mindful of the work other artists have put into their work. So if you've ever been on TikTok, if you've ever been on YouTube, you've probably heard music from other artists. A lot of people who make YouTube videos or make TikTok videos may not be the best at making sounds. But if you'll notice, when you go to the sounds on TikTok, what do you see? You see specific sounds that have the TikTok logo next to it, right? So when that happens, that means that those are sounds that you're allowed to use, and you won't run into copyright issues. If you use sounds that are recordings of another recording, you may run into some copyright issues and your video may get taken down. The same thing is true with YouTube. So YouTube actually has some royalty-free music that you can add to your video, your presentation, whatever you are uploading to YouTube. And it has options that you can use rather than using something that is protected by royalties or copyright. Because again, if you are using something that has royalties, in order to use the work, you have to pay the royalty. And if you're not inclined to do that, which I don't recommend doing in an educational setting, you can just use a snippet. It'll be a better situation for everyone involved. I promise. And again, this is all to protect the artist and to protect you. So keep in mind that the person who made the work that you are using put a lot of time and effort into it themselves, which is why copyright law exists, to make sure that time and effort is protected and that time and effort is rewarded with those royalty fees. Here is my works cited and the resources I used to complete my presentation. I used Instructional Technology and Media for Learning by Sharon E. Smaldino, the 2019 edition, and then I also use Webster's Dictionary of the English Language, the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, for the words copyright, fair use, and public domain.